back in the day, it made sense when we were talking about a community voting on what matters to them. So it's like, do you live here was the question. Once we get into the time of rentals, then I think it makes sense to say, no, just not landowners. The idea of some kind of restriction to make sure that people are voting who have skin in the game makes a lot of sense. Right now, the problem we have is you can move to an area. Heck, you can probably apply for a mail-in vote in a place you don't even live. This is the crazy thing, that there are people who live somewhere and move, and they still get a mail-in ballot. Yep. There are people who have gotten mail-in ballots to other states for a different state. And there are people who, this was Andrew Yang, said, I'm going to move to Georgia so I can influence the election, then leave. And it's like, what? What is the point? Is that democracy?
Right.
I'm going to show up. I don't live here, but I get to vote in how you live your life and then leave.
There's no rule saying I can't do it, so I'm going to do it, even though it doesn't seem right. Why would you act like that?
If democracy was honored, if it was among honorable and noble men, and I mean men in the grand sense of humanity. So this is like if women and men of good honor, we're going to have a vote on things, then I think it could work. Where you basically have everyone gets together and they say, let's all discuss things calmly and rationally. The only problem is humans are not a calm and rational entity. There are a lot of people who are just downright stupid and angry. And then that gets thrown into the mix. And then you get too much of that, you get chaos. So there has to be some degree, some restriction on how we vote. And I think it should be simple. We take one little old hurdle, just one. We put it right in front and say, do you really want to vote? We're going to make it a little difficult, but not really that difficult. And then guess what happens? Most people say, nah, I don't want to jump over that hurdle.
Takes too much effort.
Too much effort. And if it takes too much effort for you to consider like getting an ID, for instance, then maybe you shouldn't vote.
Most people are familiar with the man on the street stuff that Jimmy Kimmel has done, right? Yeah. That's your average voter. Yeah. The people that don't know the difference between a continent and a country.
I don't believe that.
You don't think so?
No, it's all edited to make people look really dumb. You know,
I think when you ask people questions about politics and when you ask them questions about current events, average people that are generally intelligent, they will fall to that level.
I tried doing some man on the street stuff when I was working for Fusion and found that it was completely a waste of time. Because unless you're there all day intending on finding stupid people to fabricate your narrative, the average person is of average intelligence, as you'd expect. Meaning, if you say something like, what's a country, what's a continent? If you got someone who didn't know, they'd be like, oh man, honestly, it's been a long time since I've dealt with this stuff. I work in accounting, so I don't really go over geography. I sound like an idiot. I'm sorry. And then you're like, well, I can't use that. You need someone to sound like a moron.
Confidently sound like a moron.
Exactly. And
you need a one-liner blip that you can throw in.
A lot of these man in the street stuff, they do target people who they think are going to be stupid. And because that makes the average, here, I'll put it this way. The average person is average. The average person watching a video needs to feel like they're a smart person, not an average person. So they target the back end of the bell curve and then show that to average people so they feel like they're smart.
Fair enough, but I think that we all can agree that most people are disengaged. We all know that the number of the portion of the population that shows like this and shows like stuff that the Daily Wire produces, they're targeting a very narrow section of the population that are politically engaged. You're talking about 5% on the high end, maybe 10, right? Maybe. And you're trying to get 50 to 60% of the population to vote is like a 50% voter turnout is really, really good.
I mean, we see this with midterm elections, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's always lower. People are more engaged during national elections.
Maybe you have to vote in midterms. Sorry to cut you off. Maybe you have to vote in midterms to be allowed to vote in the presidential election.
Right, you have to consistently participate.
Yeah.
Ballots are blank.
You have to have a punch card.
Yeah, there you go.
Ballots are blank.
There you go.
Anybody can vote. Everybody vote. No IDs required, but ballots are blank.